The third-year study on the research on educational development cooperation to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals was conducted to establish action strategies for implementing development cooperation in higher education among education goals of SDGs. So, what is SDGs? From 2016 to 2030, the international community including the United Nations must jointly implement the SDG goals, including environment, health, and education, and it refers to the new goals and performance indicators in 17 areas. SDG 4 on education is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, and consists of 7 targets and 3 means of implementation. The research on education development cooperation for achieving sustainable development goals is a mid to long-term study conducted over 6 years from 2017 to 2022. In order to achieve SDG 4.3, the target of higher education, and 4.b, the means of implementation, the third-year study synthesized major issues in terms of improving accessibility, quality, and sustainability in developing countries and Korea, and derived strategies for development cooperation in the field of higher education. Issues and tasks in higher education at home and abroad. Chapter 2 identifies trends and issues surrounding higher education at home and abroad. First, looking at international trends in higher education, the use of ICT is projected to accelerate further. In the case of mobility, education across borders is expected to become more active in the form of program and shifts in curriculum, campus, and student. The ensuring of quality of higher education is being expanded by partnership between individual countries and regional cooperation. Finally, degree recognition is being implemented to increase access to higher education. Second, some of the characteristics of the current state of higher education in Korea are centered on 4-year private universities, insufficient role classifications and ties among institutions, shrinking the number of school-aged children, decrease in finances, increase in demand in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, diversification of international students, weak system to ensure quality, and the absence of government administrative control tower. Taking all those characteristics of higher education in Korea into account, tasks for development cooperation are as follows. First, in the current situation of university structure reform, internationalization of higher education or fostering leading universities in development cooperation is needed as one of the strategies for the University for Creative Korea projects. Second, universities should provide various Korean language programs to meet the growing demands of Korean language in developing countries from the Korean wave. Third, with the rapid transition to an aging society, the life expectancy is rapidly increasing and there is a need to establish education system and foster experts. Fourth, efforts to improve mutual understanding should be made, as the current government's cooperation with developing countries in higher education is still minimal compared to other developed ODA donor countries. Fifth, a systematic approach that properly evaluates the performance of existing development cooperation programs and establishes follow-up plans is needed. Analysis of higher education in developing countries. Typological analysis was conducted to classify recipient countries according to the level of higher education, R&D, and industrial structure. First, as a result of the typological analysis according to the level of higher education, key partner countries were included in the first 2 types. The first is the country type with very low levels of higher education development, due to the low budget expenditure of the government in higher education. For these countries, the support needs to start with establishing the infrastructure and basic system of higher education. The second is the type of countries with intermediate development in higher education. Since the basic system of higher education has already been established in these countries, it is necessary to support the training of high-quality and professional higher education manpower. Next, as a result of typological analysis according to R&D level, all key partner countries were classified as underdeveloped R&D countries except for Vietnam. The study proposes faculty and researcher capacity building project support and establishing research institutes linked to national flagship industries within higher education institutions. Finally, as a result of typological analysis according to industrial structure, key partner countries were largely classified into 3 types, but let's focus on the 2 types which consist of major key partner countries. The second type has moderate GDP, higher added value in manufacturing and industries than agriculture, and higher spending in social infrastructure and services. In this type, the pace of development must be adjusted so that higher education can be linked to the labor market. The third type consists of low GDP, agricultural-oriented industrial structure, consumer goods-oriented spending, and low service sector spending. In these countries, it is necessary to determine promising industry for future development and expand infrastructure and training of high-quality human resources through selection and concentration. Next, the study briefly explored trends and development tasks for higher education in each 9 key partner countries. Despite the uniqueness of each country, similar problems were shared with respect to higher education, and they are summarized from the perspective of SDG 4. First, key partner countries still need to improve access to higher education. Second, lack of quality in higher education is a serious problem faced by almost all key partner countries. Third, in terms of sustainability, the connection between human resource development and the labor market is insufficient, which threatens the long-term development of higher education. The direction of development to solve these problems is as follows. First, it is necessary to expand opportunities for equitable higher education in developing countries. Second, it is necessary to improve the effectiveness of university education and research in order to improve the quality of higher education in developing countries. Third, in terms of sustainability, guarantee the entrance of higher education graduates into the labor market. Status of Korean ODA in higher education. Statistical analysis of Korean ODA projects in higher education. The analysis of ODA project in the field of higher education, conducted by Korea from 2015 to 2017, by fields of study showed that the frequency of ICT, science, and technology projects continued to decrease, but net expenditure continued to fluctuate. The frequency of health, medical projects, and net expenditure have increased significantly since 2016. As a result of analyzing the higher education ODA projects conducted from 2015 to 2017, based on 5 cooperation goals, infrastructure building projects were performed the most in terms of project frequency, and scholarship projects accounted for the highest proportion in terms of net expenditures. Status of main Korean ODA projects in higher education. Korea has been focusing expanding access to higher education among SDG 4's higher education goals through the Global Korea Scholarship Program of the Ministry of Education and University Establishment Support Projects by KEDI and EDCF. Projects aimed at improving quality have been increasing in recent years, but they are still being implemented with a small budget, and the study found that projects for improving sustainability were rarely carried out. So, how should Korea re-establish its higher education ODA strategy to realize SDG 4? First, it is necessary to strengthen the link between institutions as well as between projects in order to improve the efficiency of the higher education ODA projects. Second, the proportion of social impact must be increased when evaluating the project in order to reflect support for the vulnerable social groups and gender issues in higher education ODA projects overall. Third, it is necessary to adopt the integrated support method in order to realize SDG 4.3. Status of higher education development cooperation overseas. Status of development cooperation in the field of higher education by international organizations. Chapter 5 examines the status of support for development cooperation projects in the field of higher education by international organizations over the past 10 years. The status is divided into the following 9 types based on project content. The most common type of project contents was the system building project, which accounted for 38.5%. In terms of academic classification, there were more projects in engineering and natural sciences compared to other disciplines, with 26 and 14 projects respectively. Development cooperation in higher education by advanced donor countries. Among the advanced donor countries, the study reviewed the status of highest education development cooperation in Japan, the Netherlands, Australia, and the United States. The current status of these advanced donor countries gives us the following implications. First, scholarship support should be expanded to improve access to higher education in developing countries. Second, development cooperation in higher education must deal with the issue of higher education development in Korea in the long term. Third, to improve sustainability, an approach that considers the context and characteristics of developing countries is necessary. Finally, let's look at the conclusions of the study and policy recommendations. Under the goal of establishing a strategy for development cooperation in higher education to achieve SDGs, this study identified issues and tasks in higher education at home and abroad, analyzed the status of development cooperation in higher education, and finally, devised an action strategy in terms of improving accessibility, quality, and sustainability through SWOT analysis. Then, let's briefly look at the action strategies derived through SWOT analysis in the three aspects of improving accessibility, quality, and sustainability of higher education. First is improving access to higher education. The SO strategy is to support technology-oriented universities and spread online education information. The WO strategy is to strengthen international cooperation in the field of higher education. The ST strategy is to support special-purpose colleges and women's colleges. The WT strategy is to expand support for the vulnerable social groups. Next is improving the quality of higher education. The SO strategy is to strengthen teaching and research capacities and improve services using ICT. The WO strategy is to promote a collaborative development cooperation and secure professional manpower. The ST strategy is to expand support in the science and technology field. The WT strategy is to improve the effectiveness of development cooperation projects. Finally, it is improving the sustainability of higher education. The SO strategy is to stimulate industry-university cooperation. The WO strategy is to train experts and improve the efficiency of development cooperation. The ST strategy is to expand employment and entrepreneurship opportunities and promoting cooperation for the future society. The WT strategy is to promote public-private partnerships. So far, we have looked at the third-year study of the research. Full details of the research report can be viewed on the Korean Educational Development Institute website.